Today we're talking about the distributive property and how you can use it to help simplify algebraic expressions. So over here on the left, I just have a couple little notes for us here. This is kind of the format that you'll see it represented in. And what this is telling us is that A is being multiplied times the quantity of B plus C. So the way that we use distributive property is we're going to take that outside term and multiply it times each of the terms inside the parentheses. So when we multiply A times B, we get AB. We're going to keep the plus sign here, and then A times C gives us AC here. Now it works with subtraction as well, and also in this example you can see that my outside term is over on the right hand side of the parentheses, but we still use the same method here. We're going to take this Z, this term outside of the parentheses, and distribute it to both terms inside of the parentheses. So Z times X gives us ZX. We're going to keep this a negative or minus sign, and then we're going to multiply Z times Y to give us ZY. And so then these would be your simplified expressions. The distributive property, you probably already know it, but maybe not with variables or algebraic expressions. Let's take this 12 times 7 and kind of use that to help us understand how the distributive property works. So 12 times 7, that gives us 84, right? So we know that 12 times 7 is 84. What if I broke up this 12 into 10 and 2, right? Because 10 plus 2 gives us 12. And then I multiplied 7 times each of those. So 10 times 7 gives us 70. 2 times 7 gives us 14. And then when we add those back together, that gives us 84. So you can kind of see with just integers how the distributive property works. Now let's use it with our algebraic expressions. Here we've got our term of 2 on the outside of the parentheses, and then inside we've got 3 plus 5x. So we're going to just take this 2 and distribute it into both of these terms inside the parentheses. So 2 times 3 gives us 6, and then 2 times 5x, we're going to keep that plus, 2 times 5x gives us 10x. So really notice all I've done here is either multiply the constants or the coefficient and constant. The x still stays x in this term. I just multiplied the 2 times the 3 and then the 2 times the 5. So over here I have some notes about that too, just kind of helping you out with how to deal with variables and constants or coefficients. If we are multiplying two different variables, we're just going to kind of put those two variables together. If we are multiplying a constant and a coefficient, we're going to multiply the constant and the coefficient, and that variable is going to stay the same along with that solution. And then if we have two terms that each have variables, we would multiply the coefficients to give us 12, and then we would multiply the variables and just kind of stick those two together to give us mn. Okay, let's take a look at another example with problem 2. Here we've got 4 on the outside and then 10a minus 2b. So we do have two different variables in this one, but our method is still the same. We're going to multiply 4 times the 10a, which gives us 40a. And then we're going to multiply 4 times, you could view this as negative 2b, so a positive 4 times negative 2 would give us negative 8. And then that b is going to stay with that term. All right, down here we have an extra number or constant being added on to the end of this multiplication of 7 times y plus 2. So how we want to handle this is do the distribution first. So we're going to do 7 times y, which is 7y, plus 7 times 2, which is 14. And then we're going to just drop down that 5. So now at this stage, this is where we want to do what's called combine like terms, or we want to simplify this expression. We do have two like terms here with the 14 and the 5, and I do have another video all about how to combine like terms, simplify expressions. I'll link that in the description below. But because 14 and 5 are like terms, the 7y doesn't have another like term that we can add or subtract with it, so we're just going to drop that down. down, but we can combine the 14 and the 5. So 14 plus 5 gives us positive 19. Now we couldn't do that in these previous two problems because we didn't have any like terms once we distributed. The 6 and the 10x are not like terms because the 6 doesn't have a variable of x and the 10 does. So that makes them unlike terms, so we can't combine them. Same with a and b, they're two different variables, so we can't combine these as like terms. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. Number 4 has the parentheses first and then a number that's being multiplied times that quantity inside the parentheses. So just like I showed you with the example over here, we still go ahead and distribute that 8. We're going from right to left instead of left to right, but we still want to distribute anything that's being multiplied times the set of parentheses into each term that's inside the parentheses. So 8 times 3f, that gives us a 24f, and then minus 8 times 2 gives us 16. And then we're going to drop down this 6f plus 6f down here because we want to distribute anything first because order of operations tells us that this multiplication, right, that's what's happening between the 8 and the parentheses is multiplication. This multiplication needs to happen first before we do any addition. So we want to multiply that 8 through the parentheses, and now we're going to add on that 6f. So now let's see if we have any like terms that we can combine. And we do. I see a 24f and a plus 6f. So we can combine those into 30f. And then the minus 16 just gets dropped down. There's nothing else that is just a constant. So we don't have anything to add or subtract to that negative 16 or that minus 16. Okay, let's take a look at number 5. So number 5 has a fraction and it's a negative fraction. So let's see how we deal with that. Now, a lot of times when I'm working with students and they see a problem like this, a little bit of panic sets in because they see that fraction. But if you know how to multiply fractions and whole numbers, then you'll know how to do this problem. And if you're not sure how to multiply fractions and whole numbers, I will link a video in the description for you that goes over all of that. So let's take a look at this kind of separately. What we're going to do is we're going to multiply negative 1/3 times 3, and then we're going to keep that variable of p with it. And then we're going to multiply negative 1/3 times negative 6. So I'm going to kind of write that over here just to the side. Negative 1/3 times 3. And I'm going to write my 3 up high like this because I know that whenever I'm multiplying a fraction and a whole number, I need to go ahead and make that whole number a fraction by putting it over 1. Okay, now let's see what we can do with this. Well, my 3's can cancel out with each other, right? We can do some cross canceling here. 3 goes into each of these once. So what am I left with? Well, I've got negative 1 times 1, which is negative 1. 1 times 1, which is positive 1. Negative 1 divided by positive 1 gives me negative 1, right? So for this first multiplication, this first distribution, we wind up with negative 1p or just negative p. Okay, let's write the next one over here to the side. We've got negative 1/3 again times, and this time I'm going to write this as a negative 6. And then again, I'm going to put that integer over 1 to make it into a fraction. All right, looks like we can do some cross canceling again. So 3 goes into both 3 and 6 evenly. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6 twice. Let's see what we wind up with. Negative and negative, those two are going to cancel out, right? Negative times a negative gives us a positive. So 1 times 2 gives us 2. 1 times 1 gives us 1. And 2 over 1 just gives us 2, right? And this did wind up to be a positive 2, so I'm going to write this as plus 2. And this is my simplified expression. Negative p, positive 2, those are not like terms, so I can't go any further with this expression. All right, our last example here, we've got a 2w minus 4 times minus w plus 8, the quantity of negative w plus 8. So we are going to distribute this 4 that's outside of here, but I want you to be careful, especially when you have a minus sign, a subtraction, or a negative sign. You want to carry that subtraction with the 4 when you are distributing it. So we're going to consider this a negative 4 times negative 1w, and then a negative 4 times positive 8. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write my 2w, just dropping that down. I'm not using that yet. So let's go ahead and distribute the negative 4. So negative 4 times negative 1 essentially gives me positive 4w. And then negative 4 times positive 8 gives me negative 32. Okay, and then now we're going to simplify by combining our like terms. It looks like we have positive 2w, positive 4w. Those are the only two like terms that I have. So we're going to add those together to get 6w minus 32. And that's it. That's how you use the distributive property and then continue on with simplifying those expressions. I do have a lot of other videos that I'm going to link in the description that go along with this. Things like adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers, which we did do a little bit in this video. So please check those out and also let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.